Hey, we thank you for listening to the very best in modern praise and worship. I'm here with Charlie Fuqua, and we're on location, outdoors.
And why are we outdoors?
Well, I'm not exactly sure, but I just posted to Twitter and Facebook that we were going to be discussing some things, and not long after that, the power went out.
Now, what did you say we were going to be discussing?
Well, I brought up the issue that we had talked about last night to kind of preemptively prepare for today's program, and we decided to discuss what a nation's response should be to fundamentalism when it relates to Islam, Islamic faith, ideology, a way of life. Really, Islam is so much more than a religion. It's actually an entire political system. It's a whole way of life from the cradle to the grave. Covers every facet of life. So anyway, Big Brother could have shut our power off. I don't know.
So you sent out a post that's what we were going to do today, and then the power went out.
That's exactly what happened.
So we're doing everything today by battery-powered devices outside.
That's right.
So there may be traffic noise in the background.
Yeah, we're going to hear some birds chirping. It might be a nice touch.
It might be, and the sun is definitely in our eyes.
Yeah, that's our natural lighting.
Yeah.
We got some natural lighting going on today.
Okay, anyway, the topic is what should a Christian and or a Christian nation's response be to Islam? And before we talk about what the response is, I want to give some historical facts, okay? And first of all, I want to give what I believe is the foundation of Islam and what really makes it work. And it is that Muhammad said, "The spoils of war have been made lawful for me, yet they were not lawful for anyone else before me." And this is the driving mechanism that makes Islam work. That's what Islam is all about. It's an ideology of, since Islam is the only true religion and all others are false,
right,
that Muhammad and his followers have the go-ahead by God to wage war, conquer, and kill, steal, rape, plunder. That's all a mandate from the God of Islam for Muslims. And it's what makes Islam work. And just to give you a little historical precedent here, when Muhammad first started to gain, I'm going to say an army, it wasn't an army at the time, but it became that. He basically said, if you'll follow me, we will militarily attack and overcome other people, and we'll take their property. And I'll get the lion's share, but I'll share a percentage with you. And so he gathered people to... Right. Yeah, he was a warlord. I mean, being a warlord was not a new thing. There have been a lot of warlords through history. And he was a warlord. And he said, you know, he was really not very different from any other barbarian. The Vikings, Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan. They assembled a group of mercenaries that attacked people and took their property and raped and pillaged and killed.
Yeah.
And that's basically what Muhammad did. But the difference from what Muhammad was, the others were just doing it for greed. And Muhammad was doing it because he worshipped the only true God. Okay? And so it was all sanctioned by the only true God. Okay? And that is Islam in a nutshell. But I want to talk a little bit about some other Islamic doctrines that are very important.
Yeah, they're real relevant. I'm cheating.
Yeah, you're looking at my cheat sheet
those
here.
Things, people I think need to understand these things.
Yeah. In 628 AD, Muhammad, who was basically in charge of the city of Medina, sent his army, if you will, to attack the camel caravans of his former hometown of Mecca. And they waged war for 8 years. And it was just a bloody campaign after campaign. Nobody really won. And finally, both sides, war-weary, they signed a 10-year peace treaty. Well, 2 years into that treaty, Muhammad violated the treaty and marched his army victoriously into Mecca. Now, the people of Mecca weren't expecting that, since they had a peace treaty.
Yeah.
But with that, Muhammad developed the doctrine of taqiyya, which is called sacred deception. And basically what it teaches is that Muslims must use every means possible to deceive non-Muslims to overcome them and gain advantage over them. And that's what taqiyya is all about. So you need to understand that it is a sacred and holy duty for every Muslim to constantly, at every opportunity, lie to every non-Muslim.
Now I want to bring up an issue that I think is also pretty relevant to the whole discussion. It has to do with Islamic fundamentalism compared to Islamic lukewarmism, if you will. I know the scriptures, the holy scriptures of the Bible teach that, Jesus Christ is looking for hot followers. He doesn't want you cold, and he really doesn't want you lukewarm. And I think it's in Revelation chapter 3 somewhere. But basically the idea is that I'm hoping that there are Muslims out there that really don't believe the Quran. They don't really believe what they're supposed to do. They just kind of take their kids to the mosque. Just, it's the right thing to do, and we want to fit into the culture. We really don't believe this, really in our heart. I think that there are probably a lot of Christians that are lukewarm. They might go to church, Christmas and Easter only. They pray to the man upstairs. They've got this kind of a lukewarm approach to the things of God and the Spirit of God and the kingdom of God, the church. It's just kind of like, yeah. So, but I think the Islamic folks we've really got to be concerned about are the ones that take the Quran very seriously. And they take what is written there literally. And if my memory serves me correctly, the two young men that were the Boston Marathon bombers shook their fist in the face of their imam on, Friday when they worshiped, and they called him a kufar, or an infidel. Yeah. They accused him of being an infidel because he wasn't a fundamentalist. He didn't follow the doctrines correctly. He was an Americanized Muslim, if you will. And he just decided, hey, let's just get along. And I don't exactly know what the man taught, but it irritated were they Chechen?
Yeah, they were
the two Chechen Islamic guys who were fundamentalists. Ooh, we're going to be like Muhammad, we're going to kill the infidels. And you're an infidel because you don't teach the right teaching. So I think, in all fairness to Muslims worldwide, the only Muslims you really have to be concerned about are the fundamentalists. The ones that really believe the Quran, they really want to follow Muhammad to the letter. I mean, they're serious about it. The ones you don't really need to worry about are the ones that are like, it's just, we just go tomorrow.
It's good for business.
It's good, yeah, it's good networking. We can connect with the other Muslims and sell our products.
Well, I would say there's a great number of Christians that are, quote, Christians and go to church because it's good for business.
Well, that's why I bring this issue up, and I'm glad you pulled that component out, put a spotlight on it, because I think we can all identify with that. We can all understand that. We might not think it's right, but we can go, yeah, I get it. I get it. I understand that.
Now, I have no idea what percentage of Muslims really don't believe anything. It's just, Islam is our culture, and we got to go along to get along. And what percentage really believe it? I have no idea.
Well, the term you hear in the media is radicalized.
Yeah.
There are 15 to 20% of 1 billion Muslims who are what the media calls radicalized. But I really think the word radicalized isn't really the right word.
No, it's not.
Because I think it's the fundamentalist Islamic ideology.
It's the true followers of Muhammad.
They haven't perverted Islam.
Right.
Which is what we're taught in the media. These people have hijacked Islam, this religion of peace, and they've attacked us, and they've done it. Wait a minute, time out. Did Muhammad ever do any of these kinds of things? Sure, he absolutely did. This is how he lived. This is the example he gave Muslims worldwide. So it's not the radicalized Muslims, it's the fundamentalist Muslims that really believe the Quran. And what's the doctrine, Charlie, of abrogation? Is that what it's called?
The doctrine of abrogation is, and I wasn't even going to deal with that today, but it is, first of all, Islam teaches that all of the Old Testament prophets and even the apostles and Jesus were Muslims. Okay? But what happened is, Allah can replace what He has given previously with something better. And he has replaced all the teachings of the earlier prophets and even Jesus, the apostles, with something better. The teachings of Muhammad. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, it goes so far as to say even the early teachings of Muhammad, because at first he was deceived by Satan. And that's what the Quran teaches. So even the early teachings of Muhammad that talk about peace and getting along with Jews and Christians and whatnot, those have all been abrogated. Because once Muhammad gained military power, he wasn't interested in having peace with anyone other than those he could militarily conquer. And so that's the doctrine of abrogation, which is an important doctrine. And with that, I'd like to move to another doctrine, and that's the doctrine of dualism, which is also another important doctrine of Islam. And it uses different verses in the Quran for different situations. For example, if there's not many Muslims in a country and they're trying to just move in and get started, they use the verses from the Quran that talk about peace and love and getting along with others that have really been abrogated.
Yeah.
But they don't tell you that.
They serve well.
They serve
when they're
well.
a minority in the population because they don't have the power militarily or in the voting bloc to really shift that culture hard, which is really their agenda.
And another aspect, there's several aspects of dualism, is different laws for Muslims and Kafirs or Kafirs. Now, and I've got to get into the doctrine of Kafirs in a little bit, but it's basically different laws for Muslims and non-Muslims. And it's different. It doesn't, the laws that apply to Muslims don't apply to non-Muslims. So that's another. And another is different laws for men and women. Men and women don't stand equal before the law. And also it's important to understand that it is a horrible criminal offense for a Muslim to kill another Muslim. But it is not an offense at all for a Muslim to kill a non-Muslim. It's not. Actually, it's an exalted thing to do. So that's another part. And another part of dualism is any Muslim who kills a non-Muslim may take his property. So that gives Muslims a motivation to want to kill non-Muslims because it gets them richer. Now I said I need to talk about a kafir.
Yeah.
Okay, what is a kafir?
A kafir, I've heard it pronounced kufar.
Yeah, I've heard it.
But
now,
I don't know.
I tell you where I'm getting my... I went to listen to a Christian Pakistani woman who had been horribly maimed by having acid thrown in her face. And she pronounced it kafir. And I don't know if she pronounced it right or not, but
I yield to the Pakistani woman.
Yeah, she was from Pakistan and really had experienced Islam up close and personal.
Yes.
Okay. But anyway, who is a kafir? It's one who conceals the truth of Islam. In other words, if you say Islam is not true, you say it's a lie, you're a kafir. You say it's a false religion, false doctrine, you're a kafir. And how should a Muslim treat a kafir? Actually, 70% of the Quran deals with how Muslims should treat kafirs. That's a whole lot, okay? And here's what it says. And this is by both the teachings of Muhammad and the actions of Muhammad, what he actually did.
Right.
Kafirs should be hated, deceived, plotted against, enslaved, mocked, robbed, disgraced, humiliated, cursed, terrorized, raped, tortured, disarmed, and killed.
I know there's some, what do you call it, propaganda. You know, whenever a nation or a people want to kill another people, they dehumanize them. Mm-hmm. You know, it's difficult to kill someone that is just like you.
Yeah.
But if you can create a mindset in the mind of a person that this person is subhuman, they're a rat, they're a monkey, they're an ape, they're not human, they're subhuman, then your ability to kill them it's easier, I think, for that person to say, well, you know, this person's not a human being. I'm just going to kill them. They're a piece of property. And I really believe that's the idea behind this whole Kufar or Kafir thing. Is, hey, we've got apes and pigs. The Jews are apes and pigs. We can kill them. First Saturday.
Wait. You say Jews, not just Jews, Christians, Buddhists.
Yeah.
Any religion other than Islam are apes and pigs. Okay.
Right,
now, they have a very virulent hatred for Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, really, their hatred for Christians is just as great.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot of the idea is that it's first Saturday, then Sunday. First we'll deal with the Jews, we'll subjugate them, we'll take them over, then we'll go after the Christians. And I think we would be wise in America, which is probably predominantly Christian, to take notice of that and watch what happens in Israel. Because right now as we speak, rockets are flying from Hamas into Israel, and they've got this elaborate Iron Dome system that's intercepting 90% of these rockets. From what I've heard, no one's been hurt, but still, I don't know. Just imagine this. And I actually sent an email to Benjamin Netanyahu one time, just because someone said you should encourage him. So I did. I sent him an email. But what I wrote him is the same thing I'm going to share right now. I was like, if you were in Brownsville, Texas, and there were people from whatever descent across the border in the South launching rockets into Brownsville, how long would Americans put up with that?
Well,
would we be like, they're poor and stuff, and we should just let them launch rockets and kill our children? There's not an American alive that would say, let's put up with that. I don't think. Same with
although I'm beginning to wonder what we'll put up with.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is complicated, isn't it?
And I want to, with regard to the issue of the coffin, I want to say this too. The Quran says that Muslims are the best of people. And non-Muslims, now get this, are the worst, not of people, are the worst of creatures. Now I want you to think about a rattlesnake ready to strike your child. Is that a pretty bad creature?
That's a rough situation.
Yeah, that's not as bad as a coffin.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the hatred that Islam teaches for non-Muslims.
Yeah.
And it's taught that from the time children can first understand. Their first understanding is you must hate with every fiber of your being all non-Muslims. And so you talked about dehumanizing.
Yeah.
It's even worse than that. It's not that they're pigs and apes. They're worse than pigs and apes. That's what Islam teaches. Worse than snakes, worse than dogs. So okay, now, I want to talk about another doctrine, okay? And that's the doctrine of the Demi, okay? And I'm going to spell that because I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. It's Dhimmi. Okay, and that comes from a historic event, the Treaty of Umar. And what happened was the Muslims conquered another people, and I think in this group, I think they were predominantly Jews. Although it's important to note that at this time, and this is when Muhammad was alive, during his lifetime, during this time in Arabia, most of the communities that were Jewish communities had a spattering of Christians among them. The first Christians were all Jews, right? That's just the historical fact. And at this time, now I believe this particular community was predominantly Jewish, but I think there were probably Christians among them, okay? Anyway, word got out that Muhammad was winning every military conflict he had. And so when he came to Umar, the people said, hey, we just want to have a treaty with you. And traditionally what happened when people surrendered to Muhammad, he said, okay, now you have to confess that Allah is the only God and Muhammad is prophet. If you don't, we're going to cut your heads off.
And a lot of the Islamic imagery has scimitars or two swords crossed, which shows that, hey, we're going to cut your head off.
Yeah.
Even in modern times in Great Britain, I don't know, maybe 6-8 months ago, there was an Islamic man that severed the head of a British soldier in broad daylight. because that was his.
Simply because he was a British soldier.
Yeah.
That was all there was to
That's
it.
right.
Okay, anyway, these people in Umar, they knew they were farmers, okay? And they knew we can't stand against this seasoned army that's conquering everything, so they asked for a peace treaty. We said, yeah, we'll give you a peace treaty, but you've got to convert to Islam. Well, the people there said, you know, we'd really rather die than convert to Islam. You know, just go ahead and kill us all.
Why not fight?
Well, they knew they couldn't win, you know.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Muhammad, who was really a very intelligent guy, said, hey, wait a minute. Now, if they're dead, they're no good to me. They're farmers. You know, we need agricultural produce. You know, we could just, you know, and Islam teaches this. You don't always have to kill everybody you conquer. You can make some people your slaves.
Enslave them, sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But Muhammad thought about it and he thought, man, you know, they're really very productive people. We can use their agricultural output, and he created a new status, the status of the dhimmi. Okay? And dhimmis,
not dummies.
no, well, maybe they are. But anyway, dhimmis are given special rights and privileges. Okay? And in the mind of a Muslim, if a people are allowed to live as dhimmis, that's a real, I mean, the Muslims are really being gracious. That's the mindset of the Muslim. Well, now, what was the Treaty of Umar? First of all, what it was all about was the Muslims needed the agricultural productivity. And Muslims believe that first and foremost, they're warriors. And it's really kind of degrading to engage in professions like agriculture. You know, slaves and dhimmis are supposed to do that. And they're supposed to work and toil to take care of Muslims.
The warrior class.
The warrior class.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way it's supposed to be. So anyway, with the Treaty of Umar, these Jews and Christians were given special privileges. And here's what they were. They would be allowed to live, to keep their land, to not be slaves. Okay? But they had as a tax to give 1/2 of their produce or revenue to their Muslim overlords.
Wow.
Okay? And also, here are some other conditions of the treaty. They were not permitted to build churches, not permitted to repair churches or synagogues. They were required to give lodging to any and all Muslims that requested it. In other words, if they come to your house and they say, you're putting me up, or putting up my soldiers or army for the night, you have to do it. Okay? The Christians and Jews could not prevent their kinfolk, their relatives, from entering Islam, from being Muslims. If they were seated somewhere and a Muslim came into a restaurant or something, and they had to just get up out of their seat and give it to the Muslim. If they were walking down the street and a Muslim was walking down the street, they had to step into the gutter to let the Muslim pass. They couldn't wear clothes that resembled Muslim clothing. They had to wear a certain type of clothing that they could be identified as non-Muslims as a means of humiliation. Because they needed to be humiliated because they didn't recognize the one true God and his prophet. Okay? They had to clip their forelocks. They couldn't have bangs. Okay? And that just, I guess, showed they identifying. They had to wear special armbands to show. Yeah, and this actually, you know, I want to get into this a little bit later.
Yeah.
But Islam and Nazism are just remarkably similar.
Yeah.
Remarkably similar. But they had to wear special armbands to show that they were not Muslims.
Couldn't display a cross.
They could not display a cross. Now that would mean on their churches, the crosses had to come down.
Yeah.
Okay, they couldn't put, like even paint a cross on the door of the church.
Yeah.
They couldn't wear a cross.
You know, I want to jump in just for a
Okay.
second. But when there was an Islamic group that wanted to build a mosque at Ground Zero in New York, and the cry from the Islamic community was tolerance. You know, we want you to accept us. You know, we want tolerance. And I thought, you know, really, I think tolerance is good. You know, I think we should tolerate a lot of things. Other things I don't think we should. But anyway, but yeah, tolerance is good. Let's just see how tolerant the Islamic world is of Christianity, for example. So I went and did a little search about, and I came across this exact same principle that's still practiced today in Saudi Arabia and Iran. If you wear a cross,
Pakistan,
yeah, all the stands.
Somalia, I mean,
Yeah, if you wear a cross around your neck, they have a responsibility, and it's under law to yank it off your neck.
or throw acid.
And I thought, what? That's not tolerant at all. That's completely intolerant. So anyway.
Okay, let me go on, and I'll give the greatest example of the Dhimmi in all of history and talk about it a little bit. Okay, they couldn't ring their church bells.
Yeah.
Okay, they couldn't mourn for their dead. They could not build houses higher than the houses of Muslims. Again, to show humiliation. They were prohibited from testifying in court. They had no legal recourse in court in a dispute against the Muslims. Now, remember, this is great tolerance.
Yeah, this is better than getting your head cut off.
Yeah, this is great tolerance in the eyes of the Muslim. Okay, they could not criticize Muhammad or Islam. By the way, Julie Aftab, this Pakistani girl that had acid thrown in her face, she deserved that because she criticized Islam and Muhammad. Now here's how that happened. A Muslim man went into the sewing shop where she worked, and she was working the counter. And he said to her, "You're too pretty to be a Christian. You ought to be a Muslim and be my wife." And she said, "No." She said, "I know how you guys treat your wives. I don't want to be a Muslim." And he said, "But we worship the true God." And she said, "I believe I worship the true God."
Yeah.
And that was criticism of Muhammad worthy of him throwing acid in her face. And by the way, he was never punished in any way for what he did. She lost one eye, just horribly burned. She's had like 30 plastic surgeries, and you can still tell. She nearly died from it. And in the hospital, refused her treatment. But that's great tolerance. Okay. That is great tolerance. Okay.
Do we talk about this stuff because we want people to wake up?
I guess so.
I think so.
Okay, now, the best example of the Dhimmi state in all of history is Spain and Portugal. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Spain and Portugal were conquered by Muslims in about the 700s. They were totally Christian countries. Okay, they remained under Muslim control to some degree until about 1500. So we're talking some 700 years. Okay, now there was just a tiny Muslim population in control of Spain and Portugal, and the vast majority of the population were Christian, living as Dhimmis. And if you read Muslim literature today, you will read that that was the golden age of Muslim tolerance, and how tolerant they were to these Christians. And all of these rules were followed.
Yeah.
Okay, for 700 years. As a matter of fact, from Spain and Portugal, the Muslims launched further campaigns into France, and they were stopped by Charles Martel, and he's referred to as Charles the Hammer Martel. Okay, and he was just a brilliant military statistician and a great general. He was the grandson of Clovis the Great. Okay, now it's important to understand this history. Okay, it was said of Clovis that he baptized and busted heads with great gusto. Clovis was a Christian, and he spread Christianity by force. Okay, now I'm not saying we should do that, but that was Clovis. That's what he did.
Yeah.
Okay, and he made France, Christian. Okay. And so anyway, this Charles Martel is the grandson of Clovis the Great. Okay. Also key in this, he was the grandfather of Charlemagne. I'm sure probably everyone's heard of Charlemagne in history. And it's argued that either Clovis, Charles, or Charlemagne were the progenitor of the Merovingian line of kings in France that were for hundreds of years kings of France. So it's just an important. But anyway, it was Charles Martel that stopped the advance of Islam into France and checked it. Now, Spain and Portugal lived under this Muslim dominance for 400 years. No, 700 years. And in different portions of Spain and Portugal were ruled for longer periods. You know, it's not that they came in and conquered the whole thing and held it all for it was bit by bit.
Sure.
Okay? But anyway, finally, the Christians rose up in Spain and they drove out the Muslims. Okay? And it was, by and large, accomplished by 1492 under Ferdinand and Isabella. Now, if you remember the Spanish Inquisition, okay, we hear about the Spanish Inquisition and what a terrible thing that was. The Spanish Inquisition was basically religious discrimination against Jews and Muslims by Christians. And they basically drove all the Jews and all the Muslims, or Moors as they were called, out of Spain and Portugal. Okay, now remember, they lived under Muslim rule for 700 years before they did this. Okay? Also, and I think this is important, in the times of the Ottoman Turks, okay, and you remember the Ottoman Turks were at the gates of Vienna and almost conquered Vienna and were moving from the east into Europe. Okay? They required a 1/5 blood levy. Now, what was that? That meant of the young Christian boys in the lands they conquered, 1/5 of them were drafted into the Muslim army. And they served as Muslim soldiers. And now you might also understand that while they're there, they're separated from all their Christian roots. They are indoctrinated with Islam. Many of them converted to Islam. Okay?
Just to survive.
Right, and if they were a convert of Islam, they were considered just another Muslim soldier. If they were not, it was the Christian soldiers that were always the front line.
Yeah.
You know? So, let me see if there's anything else.
I know we're about halfway through our broadcast.
Okay, now, the key then is, with this background, okay, what should the Christian response as individuals or as a nation be to Islam? And I'm going to just throw that out to you.
Okay, well, I appreciate you laying some historic groundwork because I think it's critical to understand. You know, it's one thing to have an ideology or a thought. It's another thing to have hundreds and hundreds of years of history to substantiate what we're talking about. And, you know, my thoughts, you know, as a Christian individual, I don't really see anywhere in the New Testament where Jesus gives us the green light to kill our enemies.
I agree with that.
Okay, so what I believe that the Lord Jesus would teach the Christian is to love your enemies, to pray for those who despitefully use you. If the Roman soldier says, hey, walk with me a mile, which I believe was, I'm a little rusty on Roman first century law, but I believe when the Romans conquered a nation, there was a law that was put in place that said, you got to carry my stuff 1 mile. And Jesus said, carry it 2 miles. You know, so the idea for a Christian individual that they should kill Muslims because they're different, to me, is antithetical to the teachings of Jesus Christ.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, so what's the response? Well, if the response isn't meet force with force, I believe the response should be to invade the Islamic world with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, today in history, I think we've probably got unprecedented opportunity through media, through internet and different things, and I know some of that's very restrictive in Muslim countries. But my thoughts are this too. If Islam is so great, what are they scared of? Why can't I tell them about Jesus? Why can't I tell them about Christ? If they're so sure,
let's have a free open marketplace of ideas.
Let's open it up. Let's like it is in the United States. I mean, we have the freedom to share ideas and talk and be. This is how I feel. And this is what I think. And we've learned in America, not perfectly, of course, but we've learned how to tolerate one another. We've learned how to go, I think your ideas are crazy, but you know what? You're my brother, or we live in the same country. We're Americans. Let's agree on that, and go on. But this Islamic fear of Christianity, this Islamic fear of Judaism, to me speaks volumes of their own insecurity as an ideology. That hey, if you open the door and you let Christians build churches in Mecca, you let Christians build, everyone's going to convert.
And that might be true.
And I think there's something very powerful about the gospel of Jesus Christ it's superior to these other ideologies, these other thoughts. And it's always been even in our country, you can believe anything you want, but just don't be a fundamentalist Christian. If you believe that Jesus Christ is the only way to the Father, and you're going to say crazy stuff like that, well, get out of here. You don't want to hear that.
He was a good man.
Yeah. So my thoughts are that the church in America, we've got to find our spine. We've got to find our backbone. And we've got to be willing to send our best and brightest into the lion's den.
Well, that's what it is, because in Muslim countries, to evangelize for Christ is a capital offense.
I know it.
And it's being enforced.
I know it. But again, that's really, I believe, our only hope as a planet. For Islam not to sweep over the planet. When you look at the Islamic dominion mandate, I call it, their mandate to take over the world, to conquer the world, which they're very open about.
Yeah, what's interesting? We both have dominion mandates.
You're talking about the Christians
and the Muslims.
Right.
And our dominion mandate is to share the gospel.
Right.
Their dominion mandate is to conquer militarily.
Right. So if we can't find as a church our backbone to go into the lion's den, so to speak, and with wisdom and strategy and power, share the gospel in these countries, we're going to war.
Well, now you say we're going to war.
Well,
shouldn't we just roll over and play dead? I mean, if we're just to love and tolerate, shouldn't we not engage in war?
Well, I don't think. The individual response and the national response, I believe, aren't exactly the same.
Okay.
As a nation, I think, obviously the nation is made up of individuals. And I believe a person can be a conscientious objector if they want to. But, when you look at history, I may lose some friends or over this comment I'm getting ready to make, but I'm thankful for our grandparents that fought in World War II. I'm thankful for the men and women that have laid down their lives so we don't speak German today or Japanese.
Was it right for America to fight Nazism? Was that the right thing to do?
Well, yes. I think the answer is yes. And the question is could we have fought it in a different way? I don't know.
Well, because I say that, and I've already made the comment today that Islam and Nazism really have a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Although I would argue that Nazism is not near as bad as Islam.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Well, we were, off the air, we were talking about how, the wars that we're involved in right now, they're very difficult to fight because we're not fighting necessarily against a nation with borders and it's clearly defined. We're fighting in some places against people who have a thought or an ideology who are not in uniform. They're just coming after you.
I believe we have to understand that the real war is a ideological, if you will, a religious war.
Yeah.
And we're willing to receive their. I love studying the Quran. I study it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay? But they do not study our religious works. They don't want their people to be exposed to that.
It would seem in the nations that are 90% or above Islamic, there's no tolerance for any other ideas. There's not a marketplace for ideas. There's not a, like there is here. And you know, it makes me think of Brigitte Gabriel in Lebanon. You know, Lebanon was this real, you know, metropolitan kind of, what do they call it, the jewel of the Middle East or
well,
something?
they called Beirut the Paris of the Mideast.
Yeah, and you know, here she finds herself under Islamic control, crawling in a ditch to drink water because of Islamic snipers. They're going to kill her and her family because they're Christian.
And she was what, 10 years
She's a
old?
little child, yeah. So, I mean, you see what could be, and you think, what's the best way to deal with this? And I think it's kind of like if you have an oak tree. You know, I'm looking at an oak tree right now. When it's really small, it's pretty easy to pull it by the roots. And you don't necessarily have to get out a chainsaw. You don't have to do anything drastic. But as it gets bigger, if you're going to take that tree down, it's going to take a lot more. And so I think as a people, my personal belief is that the battle should be fought to win hearts and minds. And it should be fought with words. It should be fought with prayer. It should be fought with, understanding the Bible and being able to communicate the Bible with wisdom and discretion to people of different faiths and different ideologies. And I really think it seems like we're not doing such an awesome job at that. You know, I got about 41 minutes in.
Okay.
So I guess the question comes, when is it ever a justifiable thing to fire up the stealth bombers and take them out?
Let me mention another.
Really, let me just say one more thing.
Okay.
Our administration refuses to identify the fact that we're in an ideological battle against Islamic fundamentalism.
Well, the reason for
Can't
that is
say
our
it.
president is a Muslim.
Right.
I mean, that's just the fact. But let me say this: jihad. There's several aspects of jihad. Okay. One is military conflict. The other is a war of ideas, a psychological war, a war of control of media. Okay. And the Muslims know that. And they have great influence and control over Hollywood, over the news media, over newspapers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it's a propaganda campaign. And I think what's even more important is they are gaining more and more control over our educational system. And this whole Common Core thing, that's what it's all about. It's about a centralized planning and control of education. And Common Core has about 70 positive references to Islam for every positive reference to Christianity. So the purpose of Common Core is to convert our children to Muslims. And you know, people
really
say, "Oh,
think that-
that's real." Oh, I think that is it.
Yeah, that strikes me as pretty extreme.
Well,
But I might be uneducated.
Yeah.
You know, I might lack the information that you have. But when you say that, it's just like,
really? Well, I believe that's what Common Core is all about. And you know, I've said this before. You know, Nazism and Islam are so similar. Actually, communism and Islam are very similar. And years ago, I used to go to the Islamic Student Center at the university and just visit with the students. And they all told me that Islam and communism were compatible. And I thought they were crazy when they said that.
because
But
communism's secular.
yeah.
No God.
But if you really study communism and Islam, they are that's what they believe. They believe they're compatible.
Yeah.
And they are really very similar.
Well, I think communism, when it's voluntary, is wonderful.
Yeah, but that's not
not communism.
really communism.
Communism is mandatory.
Yeah.
If you don't give everything you have to the state, then you're bad.
There can't be freedom in communism. It
Yeah.
can't exist.
Right.
And there can't be freedom in Islam because your most fundamental freedoms, your freedom of religion and thought, and speech are prohibited. Those freedoms don't exist in Islam. Now, and I know we're going to be running out of time.
Yeah, we got 15 minutes.
I believe that the United States is under attack from Islam, not so much militarily
There's no doubt about that.
as it is
Ideologically. No
ideologically.
doubt about it.
And people say, oh, well, that's far-fetched.
That's not extreme to me.
But
I believe that.
we have a Muslim president. So that says to me that they have at least gained that degree of control. He has filled Washington with Muslim, and this is important, Muslim Brotherhood members. And you know, I've said this before, and this is really important. You know, you brought up the issue of what percentage of Muslims really accept this fundamentalism and what just kind of go along to get along. And I don't know what percentage that is.
The numbers I've heard is 15 to 20%.
And that may be accurate. But
Which is 150 million to 200 million people. That's the population of the United States. That's a lot of people.
But the truth is those radicals control things.
Well, that's what Brigitte Gabriel made an amazing point. You know, how many Germans during World War II were for killing the Jews and let's gas them and let's conquer the world and all that. There's probably 15%.
Oh, probably not that high.
Were really had that thing going.
Well,
you know,
how many Germans were Nazis?
Yeah, you know, Genghis Khan, Mao Zedong. You go down the list of conquering ideological systems and processes, and what percentage of those people were really on board with that. I don't think it was a very big percentage at all, but nevertheless, you still saw millions of people killed. You know, Joseph Stalin, I don't know how many he killed, but gosh, dog, he killed millions, 20 million people, something like that, because they wouldn't, you know, succumb to the ideology.
Well, anyway, I believe that the United States is under Islamic assault. Not so much militarily, although there is a military aspect to it, you know, with the terrorism and whatnot, but more in taking over our educational system, taking over our media, things like that, taking over our political system. And this is, I know the point I wanted to make. You talked about the percentage of fundamentalists not being very, very great. Yeah. Look at Egypt. By the way, Barack Obama supported the rise of Mohammed Morsi in Egypt. And he was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. And all of the people Barack Obama's putting in charge of things in Washington are members of the Muslim Brotherhood. These are the fundamentalists, the radicals.
Okay? When you talk about that, can you name names of guys?
Off the top of my head, I can't.
But it's bizarre, right?
Well, it's not bizarre. It's the people, the next level down. Yeah. It's the next level down. But anyway, in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood took over Egypt. And the majority Muslim population in Egypt said, we don't want these guys. These guys are too radical, too far out. And Mohammed Morsi is in prison and standing trial for treason and will probably be executed.
And he's the extremist that Barack Obama supported.
He's what Barack Obama wants. Barack Obama supported him. Yeah. And Barack Obama, in case you hadn't noticed, is the president of the United States. Well, actually, you probably haven't noticed because he's not really the president. He's the dictator.
Yeah.
He's sure acting like one.
I don't know. I haven't really come on. You made a statement earlier that Barack Obama's a Muslim, and I don't know that I can agree with you on that. I personally believe that he's an ideologue, that he's got this vision or this idea for America that we should all just tolerate intolerance and let's all get along, let's make peace, let's show that we care by opening the way for everyone.
But he has no tolerance at all for Christians.
Right. That's right. And that's the pervasive thought that I believe is really upon us. So I don't know that, you know, I think, what did he sit under Jeremiah Wright for 20 years, black liberation theology, whatever that necessarily.
Well, that Jesus was a communist and you can't be a Christian unless you're. That's basically what
all the other mentors that Barack Obama has had, I don't know. I know his father, I think, was a Muslim. He grew up in Jakarta, Indonesia, in a madras, which is an Islamic school. So obviously he's got a certain kind of flavor for Islam where he doesn't see it the way I see it. He sees it like, I think he sees it like oh, Islam has brought the world many wonderful things and all
Well,
that.
he says that.
Yeah, and I think he's ashamed of America.
He is ashamed.
I think he's ashamed of our preeminence in the world, and I think he wants to lower America to make us a more even playing field with the other countries of the world. I think he's ashamed of American exceptionalism and all those kinds of things. And but for me to say that he's bowing down, he might be bowing down to Mecca every day, 3 times a day in the Oval Office.
I don't know that, but his how can I put this? Just look what he does. He always supports radical fundamentalist Islamists.
Yeah, he does. And it could be because he is a radical fundamentalist Islamist. But it could also be because he's ashamed of our past. He's ashamed of Christianity. He's ashamed of and his base pushes him out there like that. I mean, the base that supports him is like, we tolerate everybody. We love everybody. Oh, you have a different idea, or you have a different gender persuasion, or you have a different idea about this. Oh, we're the party of tolerance, unless you're a Christian. If you're a fundamentalist Christian, then no, we're
Okay.
out.
Here's a question I'm going to throw out. If a nation teaches, and it's actually part of its founding doctrines, that there will be religious tolerance and religious freedom, can that nation tolerate a religion that says, we will not allow...
Religions are intolerant.
We will not allow any religion. We will behead everyone from every other religion but ours. Can a nation that wants religious tolerance tolerate that religion?
A religion that's intolerant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think where the United States has legal recourse against Islamic ideology is in the political realm. Because, most Americans think Islam's a religion, but it's not just a religion. It's a legal system, it's a political system, it's from cradle to grave, everything to do with human living. So it's actually, in a lot of ways, Islam is treason. Because you stand against the government of the United States of America,
Or whatever country you're in.
whatever country you're in, until
You can
your country's Islamic. Your responsibility as a fundamentalist Muslim is to overthrow the ideologies of other belief systems. And the United States Constitution does not fall under the umbrella of Sharia law.
No, it does
It's
not.
totally outside
Now,
of
and
it.
let me say this. We have 1,400 years of history to show that's exactly what Islam does. Don't we?
I think so.
And my goodness,
We got some birds.
we had some birds flying around here. Okay. Islam is in the process, and it will happen just on population demographics,
Right.
of taking over all of Europe, including England. That's going to happen. I mean,
That's right.
that's almost irreversible at this point.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, when that
The
happens,
number one name given to children
is
in London
Muhammad.
is
Okay.
Muhammad. That's right.
When Europe and England are Islamic countries, okay, when that happens, all Christians will be either demis, if they're tolerant, or if they're not tolerant, they'll be executed. And now, even in Syria and countries that have been majority Islamic countries for centuries, the Christians have been demis.
Yeah.
Okay, in those countries today, demi status is no longer being tolerated. Those Christians are just being killed. Okay? Now, is that what's in store for Europe and England? And if it is, what's in store for us next?
I think, what do they say? If you don't study history, you're destined to repeat it. I mean, it's a slam dunk, Charlie. I think if you think that you're not going to be subjugated to Islam, or your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, I think Muslims are very patient people, and I think they have a generational approach. There's a 100-year plan. There's no doubt about it that they mean business, and they're willing to die, and fight to the death to see their agenda and their ideology propagated. Not just, it's worldwide. I think it's time we get out there and share the faith, because if we don't share our faith, there's going to be The war will escalate.
There is a day of reckoning.
I need to take a break. Can you carry the program for a
Oh,
minute?
I hope so. Okay.
Give me a second.
Okay. Anyway, the question I have to ask is, can we tolerate Islam in a nation that has religious freedom? And I don't really believe we can do that. I believe that Islam, if it's tolerated in all situations, will eventually become the dominant religion and then the only religion. And when that happens, they'll basically just wipe everybody else out. That's what history has shown is the case, and that's what's happening around the world today. You know, we see an increase in things like crucifixions taking place around the world. Christians who say that they will not convert to Islam, today what's happening to them is they're being crucified.
Yeah.
So that's it. How can I put this? What's coming to America? Your daughters are going to be given as sex slaves to Muslim men. Your sons will be drafted to fight in the Muslim army. If they're allowed to live. That's what's coming. That's what history shows is coming. So we need to get serious about this.
Yeah, and I think our approach as a nation has been to be politically correct, to redefine what Islam really is, to say it's a religion of peace. And, you know, we kind of joke around about this, but it's not really a joke. It's, you know, hey, Charlie, you know, you can't say that kind of stuff about Islam. It's a religion of peace. Don't you know that? And besides that, if you keep it up, they'll come over here and kill you.
Yeah.
So, it's not a religion of peace.
No,
it's not an ideology of peace. Now, if everybody is a Muslim, then it's peaceful. You know what?
Well, it's not. It's not.
Well, let me say this, and you can get in on that.
Okay.
Ronald Reagan said one way to ensure peace is just to surrender.
Yeah.
You know, hey, if you want to surrender, you'll have peace all the time.
Yeah.
But the point you're going to make is you go to Somalia, or you go to Saudi Arabia, or you go to these countries that are predominantly Islamic, and there's all kinds of fighting going on.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, if you're not a radical enough Islam, they kill you. Or if you're a Sunni and they're Shiites, they kill you, or vice versa. And here's why, and this is really the key. Islam is truly the religion of Satan. And Satan hates mankind. And Satan wants to kill people. And that's what Islam is about. It's a religion of death. And that's where it goes. If there's no Christians to fight, because Satan hates all people, he will cause them to kill each other. Now, I want to say something else about this. I believe that one thing we as a Christian nation should do is we should stop doing business with Muslim nations. You know, we shouldn't buy their oil or whatever products they have to sell. We should just stop all trade with Islamic nations. Their goal is to destroy us. We need to wake up and understand that. And we need to just build a wall, if you will, trade wall, whatever, around the United States and not have commerce with those people. What do you think about that?
Well, obviously, you know, when you buy, let's just use oil, for example. You buy oil from Saudi Arabia, the Saudis receive those dollars for oil, and then they turn around and fund terrorism worldwide. You know, the money that we're putting into our gas, you know, the gas we're putting into our tank, we're spending, we're giving it to, you name the oil company that buys oil from Saudi Arabia. I guess not every oil company buys oil from Saudi Arabia. So let's just say hypothetically that the one that where you're pumping your gas does, you're literally funding the murder of people from other cultures worldwide.
You're funding your own destruction, is what you're doing.
So, you know, I think we've made great strides in our country as of late with natural gas. I think we're the largest natural gas exporter now worldwide. And there may be a move, you know, to transition America away from dependence on foreign oil. I think that's a common thought, you know. I don't think it's and it may be something that you don't want to broadcast that you're going to do. You just do it.
Well, actually, I think you do want to broadcast you're going to do it, because just broadcasting it drives down oil prices.
Yeah. Down or up?
Down. It drives them down. If America says, hey, we're going to become energy independent, oil prices fall immediately. That day, oil prices fall. Because they know, hey, we better get all we can now.